Let's deep dive into a mind-blowing YouTube podcast created by artificial intelligence, where you will hear conversations by two AI agents in a way you've never imagined before. This isn't just a podcast, it's a journey into the future, crafted by AI, designed for you. Ready to have your mind blown? Let's begin.
All right, let's dive into this book, The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel. We've got some really interesting excerpts that you send over, and I'm ready to dig in.
Sounds good to me. It's a book that really gets you thinking differently about your finances. You know, it's not just about the numbers.
Right, exactly. It's about the psychology, the behavior behind the money, like why do we make the decisions that we do with money?
It really digs into the emotional side of things.
Yeah. And I think one of the first things that really struck me was this whole idea of wealth being invisible.
Yeah.
He talks about, the guy driving a fancy car versus someone living pretty frugally.
Oh, yeah. That's such a good example, right?
Right.
Like you see someone driving a flashy car, and you might assume they're wealthy, but
You have no idea, right?
no idea. They could be drowning in debt.
Totally. And on the flip side, you might have someone living a very simple life, not spending a lot, but actually they're building this incredible nest egg, this wealth that you just don't see.
It's all about that gap between your ego and your income. Like, are you spending to impress others? Or are you spending in a way that aligns with your own values and actually builds long-term security?
It makes you think, doesn't it?
Definitely. Think about your own habits. Are you focused on building that true wealth, or are you more caught up in the appearance of richness?
I mean, it's easy to fall into that trap.
Oh, it is.
That trap of lifestyle inflation.
Yeah.
You get a raise and suddenly you're spending more, upgrading your lifestyle.
Happens to the best of us.
Yeah.
The more we earn, the more we tend to spend. It's like this constant upward creep.
But how do you find that balance, between enjoying the fruits of your labor, treating yourself, but also building that long-term security?
It's a constant dance, for sure.
Right.
But I think being mindful of your spending habits is a good first step.
Right.
Set some financial goals, maybe even automate some of your savings so you're consistently putting money aside.
That's a good idea. Automation really helps, takes the emotion out of it.
It does.
And speaking of emotions, Housel makes a really compelling point about the role of luck and risk in financial success.
Yeah, that was eye-opening.
He uses the example of Bill Gates.
Of course. I mean, one of the richest people on the planet.
Exactly. But even his story is full of luck, those chance encounters, those opportunities that came his way.
Like being in one of the few high schools with access to a computer back in the 70s.
Right. Like, what if he hadn't had that access, that early exposure?
It's mind-boggling to think about. Who knows how things might have turned out?
It really makes you think about how much of success in any field is really down to luck and timing.
A lot more than we like to admit, probably.
And then on the flip side, he tells that story about Gates's friend, Ken Evans, who died young.
Tragic. Reminds us that risk is always there.
Even with all the talent and opportunity in the world, sometimes things are just out of our control.
Tumbling, right?
It really is. It
Yeah.
makes you realize that maybe we shouldn't take ourselves so seriously or get too caught up in thinking we can control everything.
Exactly. It's about acknowledging that element of chance.
Right. And that kind of leads us to another big idea that Housel digs into, this idea of compounding.
The magic of compounding.
He uses the example of Warren Buffett. Most of his wealth actually came after he turned 60.
It's wild, right?
Incredible. He's like the poster child for patience and long-term thinking.
He just kept investing
Yeah.
steadily for decades,
Yeah.
letting that compounding effect work its magic.
Yeah, like a snowball rolling down a hill, just getting bigger and bigger over time.
It shows the power of time in the market. You don't have to be brilliant or make risky bets.
You're right.
Sometimes it's just about staying consistent and letting time do its thing.
So even if you're starting small, those regular investments can really add up over the long haul.
They really can. It's all about that long game.
And this ties into another point that Housel makes, which is that behavior often trumps intelligence when it comes to financial success.
Oh, absolutely.
He gives that example of the expert investor who's got all the knowledge but no discipline. They're chasing the next hot stock, always trying to time the market.
Always jumping in and out.
Right. And then you have that other investor, the one who's calm, patient, maybe not as flashy, but they just stick to their plan. They ride out the ups and downs. Who do you think ends up ahead?
The steady one, no doubt.
Right. It's about having that emotional intelligence to stay disciplined, to not let your emotions get the best of you when the market gets crazy.
It's about mastering your own psychology, your impulses.
Yeah, it's like that inner game that's just as important as any financial strategy.
Couldn't agree more. It's about that self-awareness, understanding your own tendencies, and developing those good habits.
I had a friend, super smart guy, knew the markets inside and out, but he would always sabotage himself with these emotional decisions. He'd panic and sell at the first sign of trouble or chase after those risky investments, promising quick riches.
Ah, yeah, I've seen that too. It's like their emotions are driving the car, not their logic.
Exactly. And it ended up costing him a lot in the long run. So yeah, this whole idea that our behavior, our mindset is just as important as our financial knowledge, that really resonated with me.
It's a powerful message. Knowing yourself is just as crucial as knowing the markets. It's interesting how Housel talks about our tendency to, project recent trends into the future.
Yeah, like assuming the market will keep going up just because it has been lately.
Exactly. We get kind of, overconfident, even reckless.
Totally. Thinking we've cracked the code or something, but then, bam, reality hits.
Exactly. It's like driving while only looking in the rearview mirror.
Oh, I like that.
You're so focused on what's behind you that you miss what's ahead. Remember the dot-com bubble?
Oof, yeah. A lot of people got burned there.
Everyone thought internet stocks would just keep going up, up, up.
And it's easy to get swept up in that kind of hype, When everyone's making money, you don't want to be left out.
Fear of missing out, FOMO.
Exactly. But Housel seems to advocate for a more, long-term approach.
Absolutely. Not trying to time the market.
Oh, right.
But instead focusing on time in the market.
So investing consistently over the long haul, riding out those ups and downs.
Exactly. Let that compounding work its magic. Think of it like planting a tree, right?
Oh, I like that.
You plant it, you nurture it, you give it time, and eventually it bears fruit.
You don't expect to harvest fruit the next day, right? You got to be patient.
Exactly. Same with investing.
So it's more about playing that long game.
Right. And I think that ties into another point Housel makes, which is aligning our financial goals with our values.
Oh, yeah. I loved that part of the book.
It's not just about accumulating wealth for wealth's sake.
Right.
It's about asking yourself, what do I want my money to do for me?
What kind of life am I trying to build? What really matters to me?
Yeah, exactly.
So if someone values travel and experiences, maybe they allocate more money towards adventures, right?
Makes sense.
And someone who really cares about giving back, maybe they prioritize charitable donations.
It's about those conscious choices,
Yeah.
right? Aligning your spending with what you truly value.
And Housel also makes this interesting point about how more money doesn't automatically equal more happiness.
Yeah, there's a limit to how much happiness wealth can buy.
Right. Beyond a certain point, it's about those other things. Relationships, purpose, health,
Totally. And I think Housel talks a lot about contentment, too.
Oh, yeah, like appreciating what you have instead of always chasing more.
It's so easy to get caught up in that chase.
Oh, it is. Especially in today's world, social media, everyone's always showing off their, perfect life.
Comparison is the thief of joy. You know that saying.
I do. It's so true. You're always going to find someone who seems to have more, do more, be more.
It's a recipe for, constant dissatisfaction if you're not careful.
So how do we break free from that trap?
Well, I think Housel suggests defining your own version of success.
Not based on what other people are doing.
Right. But on what truly matters to you. What are your values, your aspirations?
And I think he also talks about that challenge of long-term thinking.
Oh, yeah. Our brains are wired for instant gratification, right?
It's so hard to resist that temptation to spend now.
That new gadget, that vacation, it's calling your name.
But he reminds us that those small choices we make today,
They can have a huge impact on our future.
it's like that tree analogy again. Nurturing it over time leads to the harvest.
Love that analogy.
And Housel suggests thinking about our lives in chapters,
Each with its own set of financial priorities.
Like in your 20s, it might be about building your career, getting financially stable.
Right. Then maybe later it shifts to family, buying a home, planning for retirement.
And each chapter kind of requires a different approach.
Exactly. The choices you make in your 20s might look very different from the choices you make in your 50s.
Makes sense.
And it's not just about the numbers. It's also about understanding our own, financial personalities.
Oh, yeah, he talks about that.
Some people are naturally more risk averse. Others are comfortable with more volatility.
So it's not one size fits all.
Definitely not. It's about figuring out what works best for you.
Knowing yourself, your tendencies, how you react to risk and reward.
That's as important as any financial formula.
It's about being honest with yourself.
Right. What are your strengths and weaknesses? Your emotional triggers? Your spending habits?
It makes me wonder about your own financial journey. Have you always been, like, comfortable with risk, or did you have to learn to manage that over time?
I think for me, it's been a process.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I wasn't always comfortable with risk. I had to learn and kind of figure out what my own risk tolerance was.
That makes sense. And, speaking of the long term, one thing that really stood out to me was how Housel talks about legacy.
Oh, yeah, that was a powerful chapter.
And he's not just talking about, passing down money.
It's so much more than that.
Right. It's about the values you instill, the financial wisdom you share. It's about making choices that have a positive ripple effect for generations to come.
Like, what kind of impact do you want to leave on the world?
Exactly. And it's not just about family, right? It could be about your community, the causes you support.
It's about thinking beyond your own lifespan.
And I think that connects to another big point he makes about comparison.
Oh, yeah.
It's so easy to get caught in that trap, especially with social media these days.
It's like everyone's always highlighting their best moments, The fancy vacations, the big houses, the perfect families.
And you start to feel like you're not measuring up.
Yeah. It's a recipe for feeling inadequate.
So how do we break free from that?
I think it goes back to defining your own version of success.
Right. Not letting other people's highlights dictate what you should value or strive for.
What truly matters to you, what brings you joy and fulfillment.
Focus on that. Celebrate your own achievements. And, one of the more surprising things Housel talks about is generosity.
Yeah.
This idea that giving back, being generous, can actually enhance your own financial well-being. It sounds kind of counterintuitive at first.
It does.
But the more I thought about it, the more it made sense.
It's about recognizing that true wealth isn't just about what you accumulate.
Right.
It's about how you contribute, how you make a positive impact.
It's about expanding your definition of wealth.
Exactly. It's not just about your net worth.
It's also about your capacity for love, kindness, generosity.
Those things matter.
So as we kind of wrap up our deep dive into the psychology of money,
Yeah.
I think the core message here is that financial success is about understanding yourself.
Just as much as understanding the numbers.
It's about aligning your choices with your values, managing your emotions.
Making decisions that benefit not just your present self, but also your future self.
And even future generations.
Absolutely. Invest in self-awareness.
Yeah.
The more you understand your own biases, your tendencies, your reactions to risk and reward, the better equipped you'll be to make sound financial decisions.
That's a great point. Knowing yourself is key.
And who knows, you might just discover that true wealth lies not just in your bank account.
Right, but in the positive impact you make on the world. Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the psychology of money. We hope you found it insightful and maybe even a little bit inspiring. We'll see you next time.